Okay, good afternoon, hello, and welcome everybody. I see that we're here with a packed room, which is always a good sign. I'm very happy to see you all here at this Closing the Gap, a fast track for climate action and finance event live at COP28 in the German Pavilion. To the people in the back, thank you so much for being here. To the people in the front too. And to all those of you watching online, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world that you're watching from. And welcome here live from COP28. Now, my name is Hajja Yacoubi. I'm a former UN Youth Representative for the Netherlands. I'm the co-founder of an intergenerational network called 2100. But above all, I am very delighted to be your moderator for today. And not the least of which, because we are commemorating 15 years of IKI, everyone. Can we have a big round of applause for that? Yes. I like it. A little celebrative spirit. Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. Now, to those of you who might not be familiar with it yet, you will be by the end of it. Don't worry. But the IKI, the International Climate Initiative, is one of the key instruments of the German federal government to support international climate and biodiversity action through the means of financing. And now, if there is ever an audience in front of me that I don't have to explain this to, it is more important than ever, right? That we make sure that we close the gap between commitments and plans and actual financing that needs to happen to make sure that we can act on it. So also with the global stocktake having a center stage here at COP28, I think it's more important than ever that we have this discussion, which we will do elaborately. So whether you're from an industrialized country, an emerging economy, whether you're from a striving development nation, civil society, private sector, government, old, young, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day today, collaboration is the game to all of us. So we're going to talk about that and much more, but before we do, I just want to stay in that celebrative spirit for a tad bit longer and keep you in suspense. And I would actually love to make a family picture, because yes, if you're here, then you are part of the IKI family, I should say. So I actually want to ask all our speakers who will be on stage in a little bit if they will join me to the front. Yes, it's very nerve-wracking in front of all these people watching, that maybe we can make a joint collective picture all together. So if you will, please do come and give them a big round of applause, everyone, in advance already. Yeah, maybe we can even do like a backward photo. So I am looking at the people on the sides. They'll be making pictures. And maybe we can take one, a selfie with the audience too in the end. Okay, everyone say, IKI! Nice. Thank you so much. Now let's do a selfie too with everyone in the back. I think that's only fitting, right? Yes, you're also going to be on the picture today. Okay, so this is a quick Gen Z moment from my side. Let's see if we can fit everyone. Okay, I'm trying my best. Everyone smile, say IKI! Yeah. Okay, big round of applause. Thank you so much. Now, let's keep this energy up, because I want to dive right into the topic of today, closing the gap. And to do that, it is actually really my honor to welcome to the stage our very first opening keynote speaker for today, which will be given by none other than the Parliamentary State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Please, everyone, can I get a big round of applause for Stefan Wenzel?
Yes, thank you very much for this impressive start for this event. And thank you all to come here. The room is not big enough, I think. So somebody have to stand. But I hope you can hear everything what happened in here on the floor. Dear ladies and gentlemen, friends of the IKI, members of the IKI family, this year we are celebrating the 15th birthday of the IKI. The IKI success is reliant on its great network, and I think we see a big part of this network now in this room. Of a big network for implementing and also with our political partners. Great to see you all of you joining us today. And great to have Achim Steiner at UNDP Director as one of the key IKI implementers. With the IKI, We follow the idea that the design of a green and sustainable future will only be possible by cooperating. Cooperation with our partner governments, with civil society, and implementing organizations bringing different ideas, different concepts and networks to the table. Last week, we have launched the new IKI Strategy 2030 that defines how we aim to support our partner countries in their social economic transformation in the coming 6 years. On the political level, we put strong emphasis on strategic and multilateral partnerships, like the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, NDC partnerships, and the UNDP Climate Promise. I am very happy that those are all represented here prominently. Also, with the IKI, we strengthen interministerial cooperation, using the expertise of 3 IKI ministries. Together with our 2 IKI partner ministries, the German Foreign Office and the German Environment Ministry, I'm happy to announce the official start of the new IKI thematic called 2023. On the panel, you will see my colleagues, State Secretary Jennifer Morgan and State Secretary Stefan Tito. From today on, we are looking forward to your ideas and joint concepts for the 13 different topics of the call. For this call, we intend to provide up to 320 million euros of international climate funding to enhance climate action and preserving global biodiversity. With the call, we aim to significantly contribute to the implementation of the Paris Agreement, but more especially also to the global targets that we hope to agree upon during this COP. It is no coincidence that the call thematically very well reflects the recommendations of the World Energy Outlook and the IEA published only a few weeks ago. Ramp up the share of the renewables, improve energy efficiency, cut down fossil fuel demand and significantly scale up investments in renewable energy. Let me highlight two topics we address in this year's call. First, we aim to improve distributional grids, which is key to the energy transition. Without the necessary grid infrastructure, countries will not be able to increase their share of renewables and realize the energy transition. Second, the decarbonization of industries, particularly in the cement and steel industry. This will be a critical element to reach net zero. And of course, it goes much further, touching international competitiveness and future wealth of all countries, including Germany. With the Climate Club, launched at the COP28 by Chancellor Scholz, we aim to drive forward this topic on the political level as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the IKI, please have a look on the IKI website. The call was just published. You find more topics and more information there. Use the time at the COP to hook up with potential political and implementing partners. And now, I wish us all a fruitful discussion with many insights from our IKI partners. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you so much. And can we have a big round of applause for Parliamentary State Secretary Vincent? Okay, everyone, that is clear homework to each and every one of you. Take a look at those thematic calls and within this COP still try and see if you can find partners to align with. And now if we're talking about important partners, then there is one that can't be missing from this session today. Because while I go over to our next speaker, I must say that he really represents a body that is one of the most important partners that the IKI has. So can we also give him a big round of applause? Administrator at the United Nations Development Programme. Please, everyone, give it up for Achim Steiner. There you go.
Thank you so much. I was just settling in and thinking, okay, there is going to be another speaker and all my thoughts are going to be gathered, but Let me first of all say what a pleasure it is to be here at the COP and celebrate ICI's 15th anniversary. In some ways I was thinking, what do we associate with a 15-year-old? Rowdy teenagers, but that image doesn't quite work for ICI, because ICI was born already endowed with an extraordinary amount of resources with which it could from day one begin to have the ambition and aspiration to influence what happens next on climate change. And what an extraordinary commitment that has been by Germany, but also by finding a way in which ICI could become both catalyst, sometimes also enabler, and very often a financier of great significance to initiatives all across the world. But colleagues, we meet here also at a moment in time when all of us are preoccupied by this issue of financing. And I think, as with any initiative, including ICI, it can in itself not solve the financing problem on climate change. But what I think it has done, and I hope it will continue to do, is to enable those who are experimenting, exploring, creating new partnerships, new platforms, sometimes going deep into our fiscal and financial system, including the regulatory environment, to create the kind of finance ecosystem that eventually and ultimately will allow us to finance the kind of transitions we are talking about. In Dubai, we are celebrating another breakthrough, and I think many outside of Dubai may not realize that the Loss and Damage Fund is not only a success in its own right, it is also testimony and proof to those who actually believe that the UNFCCC is a perfectly functional platform on which the world can deliver together. If we can manage to negotiate a decision in Sharm el-Sheikh and a year later adopt the establishment of this fund, then perhaps we should also reflect on why have we failed on so many other issues in the UNFCCC? Because the great narrative that I see in most media when heads of delegation, heads of state leave or comment after a COP is, well, this process just doesn't deliver. Well, it does deliver, and yet when it delivers, it is because the member states, those who are actually the ones who decide, come to a degree of consensus that allows this instrument, this platform for multilateralism to actually deliver. But we all know, and this is the harsh reality at this moment in time, that when it comes to finance, the financial reality of our global economy transcends and by far exceeds the reach of the UNFCCC. It goes to the core of how we think about financing transitions, first of all, in a world that still remains desperately unequal. Not just in terms of the legacy and the responsibility of emissions, but also desperately unequal in the ability and the capacity to actually invest in something that is no longer a matter of contest. Show me one developing country that would not wish to be part of a low-carbon, green transition energy future in today's world. I haven't met any leaders recently. On the contrary, I went to Kenya just a few months ago. Many of you may have had the opportunity to be there or to at least follow the Africa Climate Summit and hear Kenya's president say in very, very clear terms, for Africa, industrialization is now the #1 priority, but Africa may be the first continent that has to go green first before it can succeed in industrializing. Now, those are the conversations in today's world, and so, we are far from where we were 15, 20 years ago when we debated the science of climate change, the responsibility for climate change. We're actually a family of 193 nations or of 8 billion people, all acknowledging that we have to make great transitions happen. Now, as head of the United Nations Development Programme, one of my daily frustrations is to go across the world and meet with leaders, with communities, with even private sector operators, and listen to the litany of frustration that they continue to experience when it comes to being able to actually move forward. And as always, it's a complex mix of things, but frankly, the more I listen, the more I'm convinced it comes down to having to rethink how the financing of climate change action goes beyond mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage. We have to go back to the fundamentals of our financial ecosystem. and to how we incentivize or disincentivize the kind of financing that actually allows us to go to scale. You are all familiar with the fact that in much of our countries, the public sector is only a fraction of what actually is transacted in an economy. Maybe 15, maybe 18% of GDP is a public budget. So inevitably what happens in the marketplace, not only for capital but also of corporate investment decisions, is at least 5 to 6 times more immediately relevant to what happens next. And yet, and I had the opportunity yesterday to join the finance ministers meeting here, the coalition that has grown to, I think now 90 finance ministers coming together on climate change, and to share with them something that, and here let me quote Lord Nicholas Stern for a moment, known to many of you as already a pioneer in thinking about financing over the last 2 decades. We were talking and he was presenting the latest report on looking at the global stocktake and its implications. And he put it so simply, as he often is prone to do, that it actually, to me, sums up where we are. He says the global stocktake is a sobering balance sheet of where we have gotten to. But why are people surprised? Because the issue is very simple. We didn't invest enough, so why are you surprised that the global stocktake isn't looking better? And that is actually what it comes down to. Now, we live in fiscally distressed environments right now, post-COVID, in the middle of a debt crisis, wars breaking out around us at the moment as if we had nothing better to do as humanity at the beginning of the 21st century than to go to war with one another. We are able to increase, without really hesitating, defense budgets to 2, 3, 4% of GDP, but we can't get it together when it comes to actually looking at how we can incentivize financing for transitions. There are over 48 developing countries right now who are one step away from actually defaulting on their debt, having an economic meltdown. They also happen to be countries where most of those that we often then in the climate narrative describe as the most vulnerable in the world. And then we ask of those countries to please also pivot forward into a low carbon future, and if possible, yesterday. This is not a viable proposition for a world to come together and invest in this kind of transition. At the other end of the spectrum, we have seen something that in some ways is a little bit more hopeful. G7 countries over the last few years have begun to invest in decarbonizing their economies on a level and a scale that many have called for decades. But right now, I have 2 more minutes, and I'm landing just where you want me to land. I was given 10, so, but maybe that was before the meeting. Where we are right now is seeing literally hundreds of billions of dollars being deployed into low carbon technology, into energy transitions, into decarbonization. But it's not just the G7. It is also China, it is also India. So let us recognize that there are economies in our world that are perfectly capable to deploy the kind of financing we need. So, as ICI celebrates its 15th anniversary, I think we need to basically try and bring 2 lenses to the next chapter in its history and also the way we look at financing in general. One is we have to help every country, and I believe the NDCs are an extremely important vehicle here, to analyze, agree, and reach consensus on what it is that a country can do of its own interest, in its own interest, and with its own means to decide to do so. And then define also what more it could do if it had the co-investment of others. And therefore, I think in the way that ICI hopefully will continue to support the NDC process leading up to Berlin and COP30 is going to be extremely important. It's the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. It's the second major milestone and frankly litmus test of whether the Paris Agreement remains relevant to our future work on climate or not, in the way that it will raise ambition. And it can only come from within national sovereign decision-making and dialogues, and the NDCs are now the accepted vehicle for capturing that. And secondly, on whether we can finance new kinds of partnerships that go to the core of correcting our financial systems that are so distorted that we continue to be able to spend $7 trillion a year, the famous IMF figure, on fossil fuel subsidies. And let me repeat, $7 trillion a year. and yet not able to find the kind of investments we are talking about when it comes to rapid energy transitions, adaptation, loss and damage. The financial markets need to be given different incentives and different signals, and that goes to the core, I think, of our discussion here today.
Yeah.
And once again, on behalf of UNDP, also happy birthday, Iki. It's been a great privilege to see you grow up and to see you be so relevant, and also such a great partner to the work that we do in the United Nations Development Program with many countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone? Achim Steiner. No, thank you. Yeah, you may sit down again. I think your speech was just so convincing to me that you were like talking about speeding up and we need to accelerate action, that I came on maybe a little too earlier just because it was so convincing. But thank you so much. I think you said some wonderful things. Also, can I have some appreciation for the analogy of Iki as the 15-year-old teenager? I can tell you, I have a younger sister at that age, and they are very good at, you know, changing the narrative, being stubborn and paving a new way. So I think that might also be representative of what Iki has been doing and continues to do. Now, I think we've had two amazing speeches so far that really lay a fundamental basis that we can continue to have a conversation with together. So I'm very excited about doing that, and I will no longer keep you in suspense and invite to the stage our panel of stellar speakers that we have for today. So please, everyone, get your enthusiasm ready, because I would very much like to welcome to the stage State Secretary and Special Envoy for International Climate Action at the German Federal Foreign Office. Please, everyone, a big round of applause for Jennifer Morgan. If you would like to sit there, yeah. Then a big round of applause too for State Secretary at the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection. Then I'm talking about Stefan Tito, everyone. Welcome, if you'd like to sit here. Yeah, thank you so much. Also delighted to have the Deputy Minister of Indonesia of the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investments, and he is also the focal point for the Just Energy Transition Partnership. Everyone, a big round of applause to Mr. Rahmat Kaimuddin. Thank you so much. If you'd like to sit here, actually. And then we have the Global Director of the NDC Partnership Support Unit, Pablo Vieira, everyone, a big round of applause. Pablo, welcome. If you can sit there. And last but definitely not least, of course, we have amongst us the head of the South Africa Presidency's Just Energy Transition Partnership Implementation Unit. A big round of applause for Joanne Javic, everyone. Welcome. Please have a seat. Thank you so much for being here, to all of you. Now, actually, I want to dive deep with you guys into the topic of how do we actually get to closing that gap. Fast track from climate action and finance is what we're talking about. But before we do, I would actually first like to turn to the audience for a quick interaction, actually. When you came in, you might have found a little card on your seat. Can you hold those up for me? And to the people in the back, if you don't have them, don't worry. In a little bit, I have a couple of statements for you, and I'm actually very curious to hear from you whether you agree or disagree with that statement. I mean, needless to say, but if you agree, you raise the green side to me. If you disagree, you raise the red side to me. To the people in the back, if you don't have a card, you can raise your hand if you agree and keep it down if you disagree. Everyone understands? Yes? Okay, then I'm going to test that. My first statement is I understand the rules of this game. You show me. Okay, nice. Only the people that are on their phones didn't do it. I see you. Now you're looking up, and now I got your attention. Okay, my statement that I want to propose to you, and I'm actually very curious to hear from you about, is are you optimistic about whether or not we can accelerate the rate at which we're using green financing, climate financing to have more action? Who is optimistic? Can I see hands or can I see green sides? And if you're not optimistic, keep it down and keep the red ones down. Okay, we have some people to convince. Also in the back, I see over here there's somebody. But that's good for us to know, because maybe at the end we can revisit that question and see sort of where we're standing in terms of optimism. That being said, I would say let's start right here. And maybe, Jennifer, if I can start with you. I'm actually really curious to hear from you. I mean, you have been asking here at COP28 that we really need a course correction, right? When it comes to the rate at which we're bringing about change. I mean, how do we keep 1.5 degrees compatible and keep clear climate pathways forward? What would you say that the role of ICI could be in that? How do you see a role of ICI in achieving that?
Well, happy birthday, Iki, if I may. And
Yes.
Having been one of the, I think, in another role, one of the first recipients, it's great to see what Iki has been doing over the years. I think, you know, we're going through a huge transformation, and we need to go further, faster, as you were saying. And I think ICI really stands ready to support that transformation, because you need very bold political decisions, you need bold policies, regulatory policies to shape the transformation. And I think what ICI does is it's kind of combination of things. Like, it's the technical support, because it's not just about big targets, we know.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think what ICI does well is get into the weeds, has that technical work that's there, that's quite important to get the enabling environments, the capacity building, the right skills also for implementation, which we're all learning we need to build up, and to also provide financial support to mobilize investment at scale. And I think the other thing that's good is the connection between, and Achim Steiner was saying this process, and then ICI and what ICI works to do on the ground.
Yeah.
Because I think what we hope to be able to do is to build the confidence of countries that they can move forward in transformation, that they're not going to be, you know, and so taking those cutting-edge financing instruments, working with people on the ground in order to move those forward. I think that's another key piece that I think can help on accelerating and that course correction, so that we're all aligned.
Yeah. So I like how you say it's about building that confidence together, and then ICI could be a tool to help do that on the ground. I mean, we're here at COP28. The negotiations are ongoing as we sit here. How do you see? Do you also see a role for ICI there in sort of like bridging the gap between what is being negotiated and implementing it when we all get back home after this conference?
I mean, absolutely. Maybe two examples. One on renewables and the phase out of fossil fuels. ICI this year has a call for renewable energy in sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay. Yep.
And supporting the accelerated of renewable energy partnership in Africa, which was launched. I was in the ministerial, but was launched by Chancellor Scholz and President Ruto and others this week. And that's really about building that up and doing, working with Irina as well, listening to what are the needs on the ground and building it from there. All right, so that's one piece. And the other was a call that we did this year, which is around resiliency in the Pacific. And there I was had the honor to be at the Pacific Island Forum recently, and they're looking regionally, okay, what are the approaches in order to build up resiliency to avoid the losses and damages, and being quite practical about that. So as we build up the adaptation, right, the goal, the guiding star, fill the loss and damage fund, but how do we actually avoid getting to losses and damages and building that resilience?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe just tapping on that, I mean, when you mention the Pacific Island states, and you're of course also very much tapping into those most affected already, I'm curious to hear from you, if you will. How do we ensure that we include those? And I mean, I know it's a recurring thing that we discuss many times. When we make it very tangible, how do we ensure that we involve those most vulnerable and most affected, but also those that are in the driving seat of forcing and pushing for change, as we can see here as well, for example?
I think you work on the ground. You work with community-based organizations. You make sure that you're working with partners that can then do that. I mean, there's more than 1,000 projects across 150 countries, and a lot of those are local. And so when I travel and meet people, I mean, also try and connect all the different dots. And I meet so many amazing change makers. So empowering, not just empowering them, getting them the resources that they need to meet their goals.
Yeah, and do what they need to do. Thank you so much. Hey, Pablo, if I can again go to you. Ooh, now you're already inset in the chair. I mean, we just heard Achim Steiner speak as well, and he mentioned how the NZCs are such an important tool as well when we talk about driving action and also making sure that we bring everyone along in that journey that we need to make. being the global director at NDCP. Would you agree, maybe for starters?
Definitely agree on that, and I think that we're in a critical moment where we really need to double down on the spirit of the Paris Agreement, and the NDCs are a cornerstone of that. And if we don't move forward with what enabled the Paris Agreement, which are the NDCs, then we will definitely fail.
Absolutely,
so we need to make sure that we move forward and
Hey, and if we look at the title of the event, Closing the Gap Between Climate Action and Finance, from the NDCP background, and I mean, you've had the first cycle of NDC updates from that perspective in light of the global stocktake. What are some ways that you could see potential and like the potentiality, I think, of an instrument like ICI to really make sure that we close that gap, and maybe also from like the perspective of NDCP, like what is some support that you offer that you could see some cooperation potential for ICI as well on?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to also celebrate the 15th birthday. Happy birthday. And I was also engaged with ICI before being in this role when I was in government in Colombia. So have been working very closely with the German government and with ICI. So I know it's a fantastic platform for mobilizing support at scale for countries. So congratulations on that. And hopefully you will reach 100. So
nice. I hope so too. That would be good. That would be a good
don't
party.
Philip, you don't have to be. But let me say something. The NDC partnership has grown since it was launched, and Jennifer had a huge part in that back in 2016 to over 200 members, and we support over 90 developing countries on the ground, and we've been doing it for 7 years. And what we're seeing is that originally countries needed a lot of support to understand what those INDCs in the first round were and how to bring together relevant stakeholders to figure out how to implement them. So the first few years there was a lot of struggle in terms of building the foundation for effective climate action, because it was only ministries of environment sometimes, and sometimes not even ownership within the government for what was put forward, and very void NDCs with a number, but not really an explanation of how. So those first years, the partnership deployed a lot of support in terms of enabling environments, institutional frameworks, policy frameworks, legal frameworks, so that there would be strong foundation. Then came in the lead up to Glasgow, the updating of NDCs. And ICI was fundamental in that because it provided support through partners to support countries not only raise ambition, but make sure that NDCs that were developed then would be high quality and that would go through the processes that allow for the ownership, for the participation of all relevant stakeholders, for a whole of government approach, for a whole of society approach that would allow these NDCs to be better.
And when you say high quality, can you maybe elaborate?
Yes. Yeah. So make them better in terms of better data, better information, monitoring processes, costing, all those elements that make NDCs implementable at the end of the day. And then the processes, because if you don't have the ownership of the rest of the government, of the civil society, of the private sector, then it's very difficult to implement. So that resulted in almost 70 countries that presented more ambitious NDCs, both on the side of mitigation and adaptation. And then over the last couple of years, countries now are ready to implement because they have these good NDCs in place. So the biggest challenge is finance. How do we mobilize finance at scale to actually implement these actions? And again, here ICI brings a fundamental characteristic, which is it builds on what is there. It connects the dots. It allows different stakeholders to come together and to generate synergies and impact. And also through the partnership, ICI has supported the operation of the support unit, has supported the climate action enhancement package, which supported the updating of NDCs. It supported the embedded advisory initiative to recovery from COVID. It's supporting everything. And that not only through us, through our members, through Climate Promise in UNDP, Climate Analytics, 2050 Pathways, GIZ, and that allows for the ecosystem to come together with resources and really deliver an impact.
And maybe if I can, because I think this is valuable, right? This is the experience that's been built up over such a long journey, so to say. You're mentioning synergies here, things that went very well because of everything that the ICI was able to do, drawing from that experience of having that first sort of NDC update round. Are there also things that you think ICI could further implement or could do more of to strengthen the path forward in our journey to become 100 years old?
Yes, well, for sure. And of course, IKI's responsibility is not to finance projects, but it's to generate the capacity on the ground for countries to be better fit for purpose in terms of mobilization of finance.
Okay.
And also, it will start now with the work that we're doing together in terms of enabling countries through capacity embedded in ministries of finance, for example, or through the work that we're doing together in central banks, so that the policies and the legal frameworks are adequate for engaging the private sector, for example, and mobilizing finance. But it also reflected on the efforts that we already started together to support countries update their NDC in the lead up to 2025, where we go beyond implementability, and we really need to think about investability of these NDCs, so that they're really ready to move forward with the mobilization, effective mobilization of finance. And this is all grounded also finally on the government, the German government's effort to really look at the different things and use adequately its tools so that they can provide the support, adequate support to them.
I like that. It's a super tangible thing that we can focus on moving forward. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Now, as you can also hear in the back, this conference there's so much happening. It's very hectic, very busy. And in light of that, I also know actually that Pablo and Jennifer, you need to leave in a little bit. But before I let go of you, because that's very hard to do, I have one super brief question, like a fire question. If you can just say very shortly, what is the one thing that you would wish to see in the next 10 years of the IKI? So we're not at 100 yet, but we're going into that young adult sort of period. If you would have to name one thing very shortly, what would it be that you'd hope to see?
Well, I would look just for the next 6 years.
Okay.
Because
I like that. Yeah.
that's when we have to have global emissions. So I think that IKI is in the next 2 years, IKI has laid the groundwork and build the confidence and help catalyze the funding for the NDCs, that they can then close that gap to the 1.5 goal, but also really demonstrate the two sides of the same coin of climate and development.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you so much. Pablo, anything to add?
I was thinking of being catalytic, but I also think brave.
Brave.
The needs of developing countries are huge, and we need brave initiatives like IKI to really go to the ground, to the countries, understand what they need to do, and take risk in supporting them.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone, for Jennifer and Pablo? Please, if you have to leave, you can go. Oh, Mr. Rahmat, if you actually know, if you can join us a little bit, because then we're going to scooch in over here. Because I would actually like to continue this conversation. And to do that, I have another question to you, our audience. So everyone get ready and set again. Take your cards out, because when we talk about closing the gap, I'm also very curious to hear from you if you feel like we're sufficiently including the just element. So I know that we're going to be speaking about just energy transition partnerships in a little bit. Who thinks that the just element is being included enough when we talk about green financing, climate financing? Can I see the green cards? Ooh, lots of red and lots of hands that are being kept down there. Okay, but that is a clear signal, because luckily we have some experts here with us. And maybe, Pak Rahmat, if I can start with you, I would actually love to start to really hear from you about the Indonesian perspective. I mean, Indonesia has just signed a Just Energy Transition Partnership, and additionally also launched the Comprehensive Investment and Policy Plan, really as a roadmap to also lead for the JETP. If you could mention one thing that you would say from a technical assistance instrument like IKI could really help when it comes to having interventions, aid, perhaps in the Indonesian perspective, what would you say needs to be done from IKI's side?
Only one?
Oh, you got lists for me. Yeah. You may start with one.
Yeah, I think for energy transition, you can take a look at it, and maybe three things will be required. Yeah. So first of all, it's about having the infrastructure. So having the infrastructure for countries like Indonesia, which is developing. Coal fleet is relatively young. Geography is very difficult. 17,500 islands, 280 million people. You need to plan and design and look at what is already here. And of course, in order to do that, you need the type of financing that is different. If you want to build transmission, or infrastructure, you need maybe low-cost financing. If you want to develop renewables, maybe commercial financing is fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to do early retirement of coal-fired power plant, that is where the really ultra low cost or grants will be required.
Okay.
Because you're gonna destroy value.
Yeah.
And of course, the capacity building.
And when you say that,
you need
capacity
we need the people who can actually execute.
Yeah.
It'll be, I think one time in Berlin, I said to Thomas, it's like, you cannot just, if you're sick, you cannot just get a doctor who don't check on you and just say, oh, you're sick, then you have to do this.
Yeah.
Without actually learning what is your sickness, what is your behavior,
Right.
and all that.
Yeah.
And I think coming on the ground, what is being mentioned before, is very critical, and also learning what is the inherent problems in the country, because typically, I heard a lot about, oh, we need to help people to raise ambition.
Yeah.
Ahim mentioned, like, no countries don't want to do this. We all want to do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, our ambition is limited by our capacity.
Yeah.
If you don't have money, you don't have that much ambition if you don't have the capability. So I think the question is that, maybe if the one thing is that, don't tell us what to do, help us get there.
Don't tell us what to do, help us get there. I love that. Yes, there is somebody that wants to initiate applause. I love that. And also, I think yeah, please do it. Now we have to do it. Come on, a big round of applause, everyone. I liked, you sneaked in a couple more indeed, because infrastructure, what sort of financing do you need? Sometimes it's low cost, sometimes it's different. Tailor-made strategy, so I love the analogy of somebody being sick and then you go to the doctor. It's not telling them, oh, you're sick, but like, help me to sort of like get to a better state. Capacity building as well, that's a big one too. Maybe in light of that, Joanne, if I can go to you, because I would love to ask you from a South African perspective. South Africa has also launched a Just Energy Transition Partnership. IKI is also supporting the Just element here with their own dedicated Just SA project. How would you say that we safeguard the Just element?
Okay, thanks very much, and afternoon, everybody. Firstly, congratulations to IKI on 15 years. I think it is important to say that Germany and the German government is an important development partner for South Africa. In the current pledges that we are sitting with in our Just Energy investment plan, Germany is the biggest funder at this point in time, and I think importantly is also the biggest grant funder. And I think it's important to say that, because in order to answer your question about the Just, I think that the issue of how you mobilize finance and what that kind of finance is, and in particular, the ability to be able to mobilize grant and concessional finance to be able to support initiatives from the bottom up and to help to use those initiatives to actually build the support and the capacity for communities on the ground to actually own the just transition is absolutely critical, because without that, we aren't going to have a transition.
Yeah.
So I think that in our country, which has, it's a highly energy intensive country, our emissions are very high. We have large populations who are dependent on coal for their living. Being able to take forward a transition and to be able to reach the bottom end of our NDC, because our NDC has got a range. We've worked out what we can do as a country on our own with our own resources, and then we've said if we want to get to a 1.5 degree compatible trajectory, we're going to need support from the international community. But we need the support from the international community, and we need the support from our own people. And the finance and the way that finance comes is critical in order to be able to take that forward and achieve it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But and thank you indeed, and maybe if I can continue on that, because you're mentioning a very fundamental thing here, right? You're mentioning the bottom up, grassroots almost. It taps into what Pak Rahmat said earlier. But can you maybe elaborate on that? Because I mean, one of the success factors that the IKI is also trying to pursue is making sure that that we have an inclusive transformation process. So we include indigenous communities, marginalized groups, but also those local communities. And I wanted to hear from you. How would you say, from a South African perspective, that we can better ensure that we have an equitable sort of inclusion of subnational regions, for example, in the work that we do?
Okay, so maybe just to give an example, our coal industry and our power industry are located in one province of our country, in Mpumalanga.
Okay.
And so you've got about 100,000 or 150,000 people directly employed in the coal value chain, but a number, probably 10 times that, who are dependent on it. And so you've got this high concentration of dependency and high risks for a coal phase down if that region of the country doesn't get very significant support in order to be able to look at a different kind of future. So I think maybe our approach, just to talk a little bit about our approach, what we have learned, and we've learned through one difficult experience, is that what you've got to do is to invest heavily in the alternatives upfront.
What do you mean when you say that?
So we've got to put in place a set of new socio-economic opportunities, new industries, build local manufacturing and other capacity, develop the skills base. Before you try and switch off any coal power station.
Right.
In our case, we want to, the approach that we're going to follow is that you build the new energy capacity. Again, at the site of the power stations in other parts of that region, and you do it up front and you do it first. So you are creating new jobs, new livelihoods, new opportunities before you decommission. So really it is about building a regional plan in this case and implementing it so that people can see that the just transition is something that is going to benefit their lives and that is something that they want and that offers opportunities for them and for their families, and then you can look at how you move forward from there.
I thank you for sharing this, and I really love this example because it taps into something so inherently human, which is also the fear of the unknown. If there's no perspective at the very start and you don't know where you're headed towards when change comes, it's much more harder to get there, and there will be much more resistance. So it's also a very smart method in that sense. I want to go to you, Stefan Tiro, if I can, because I'm actually really curious. We've been talking a lot so far about mitigation finance, but I'm actually really curious to hear from you. What are other elements that you would say that are equally important for achieving our common goals when it comes to climate and environmental paths that we need to forge forward?
Yes. So thank you. Yes, I think mitigation in the energy sector, of course, is crucial. But I'm convinced that we have to take a broader perspective if we want to be successful. And we are facing in a triple planetary crisis. The climate change, of course, biodiversity loss and pollution are inextricably linked. So we simply cannot afford to look at each of these crises in isolation, and we have to think them together and look for joint solution. And fighting the climate change and biodiversity loss can only succeed hand in hand. Intact ecosystems are not an optional add-on and nice to have. So I think they are really very much climate action hardware. And without stable natural carbon sinks, we will be just unable to reach our climate goals. And similarly, without healthy ecosystem, climate change will hit us full force. And for example, expanding natural carbon sinks, stopping deforestation, or rewetting peatlands can help us remove carbon from atmosphere and quickly curb down CO2 emissions. Similarly, intact mangrove forests or natural floodplains can help us protect against flooding, which will occur more frequently. So our event today, entitled Closing the Gap, but there are not just financing gaps, but also gaps between climate and biodiversity action that we should all aim to close. So I encourage all of us to pay greater attention to this link between this planetary crisis. And climate action, so the NDCs, the NAPs, the LTS, and the biodiversity protection strategies, the ND-subs, of course, must go hand in hand. And similarly, since the negotiators are sitting just next door, we have to think and implement the Paris Agreement and the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework together.
Yeah.
So, and then nature can be our ally in fight against the climate change, and technical solutions will not get us all the way to achieving our climate goals. So let us make the nature-based solutions as an integrated part of our climate action toolbox.
Yeah.
And this is why we are committed to offering solutions, and we want to make the link between climate and biodiversity protection concrete and actionable. And for example, the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, it will boost investment in nature restoration and conservation, was negotiated in record time, and with our initial contribution of 40 billion euros, we are aimed to help making the GBFF operational. And of course, the natural and biodiversity protection are also the core element of the ICI, and we want to support partners to implement ambitious climate and biodiversity policies. And so the ICI is our major instrument for supporting these integrated approaches that combines the nature, the climate, and the biodiversity protection, and we want to strengthen the synergies between these both goals.
Yeah.
And so,
I like that. Nice.
so with this thematic call
because how
that
can
we
ICI
launched today.
how can ICI like help accelerate those efforts? Maybe you'd like to.
Yeah, we want more proof how climate and biodiversity action can be brought together in practice, and I'm very happy that with this new call we intend to found integrated approaches in thematic areas such as I already mentioned peatland protection, circular economy, the resilience throughout biodiversity, so with really significant amounts. It's a really great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that. It's also, I think, again, a call to each and everyone. Check out those thematic calls, because I think it really goes to show. And Stefan, I loved how you said it. We need nature as our ally. When we talk about closing the gap, it's not just closing the gap between climate action and finance on the one hand, but it's also really about closing the gap between biodiversity and nature on the other, and climate as well. How do we sort of bring those closer together? So thank you so much also for sharing that. I want to go to you again, Pak Rahmat, if it's okay, because I'm actually also very curious to hear from you if you could give any recommendations to other countries. I mentioned some partnerships earlier and projects that you're working on from the Indonesian perspective. What would you say that people should keep in mind when it comes to this sort of form of plurilateral partnership, so to say?
One lesson that we draw from the JETP partnership is that there's a lot of unknowns. I would say when we work with a lot of people, three key lessons comes up. There is no cookie cutter solution for climate. Every country have their initial conditions, they have their constraints. So it's very important to build that capacity locally, because it's like, the patient typically know their body better, but they need support to understand. The second thing is, there is no silver bullet, unfortunately, today. We cannot be too dogmatic about, you have to do it this way, or not this technology, or know this type of things. I think we have to be open for all the possible solutions, as long as it reduces emission, for example, as a North Star. Maybe it's not perfect, because every country is a spectrum of economic development, technology know-how and whatnot, right? So you kind of need to say that, okay, maybe in the big countries it's like this, but on the other it's like this.
Yeah.
And the third one, unfortunately today, no free lunch.
No free lunch indeed.
So
yeah.
nobody, when we look at the economics, a lot of people will say like, okay, I want to invest, but I need to have this type of rate of return.
Right.
And oh no, you are a developing country, your credit rating is this, so you have to pay this much.
Yeah.
And what we have to recognize is that carbon emission knows no passport, knows no credit rating. It all go to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So some sort of ways to look at financing in terms of the impact, rather than the economics only, is probably required. I mean, I don't know how to do it, but like, you know, I also spoke with the defense bankers, and they say like, oh, we are here to make money. And I guess maybe the bottom line is nobody knows how to price emission yet that much.
Yeah.
And because emissions come with different type of quality as well. They say, oh, if you do this, okay, but if you do early retirement, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
If you shift from EV bus to
Right, I get
this,
it, yeah. It's very different. And but I do think, and sorry to interrupt, but I think you just said something that actually is so fundamental when we talk about risk aversion or other things when it comes to financing. It is indeed a very binary approach almost of their project and my project, but in the end, if it's about financing a transition that we all are going to need for the greater good, if we want to have a life of human dignity collectively on this earth, then it is a collective thing that we need to pursue, and I think that that's a good one, actually. We are almost out of time, but I will not let you leave without asking you the same question that I also asked Jennifer and Pablo, because I'm actually really curious to hear from you. I mean, we've had many birthday celebrations so far, analogies of teenagers and whatnot, but I'm also curious to hear from you in the next sort of 10 years for the IKI. What is the thing that you're hoping to see? And maybe, Joanne, if I can, I would actually love to start with you to hear from you. If you could say very briefly, what would be the one thing?
Clearly, I mean, I think the one obvious thing is to see the initiatives that are being supported take root and flourish and achieve their aims. So I think that building the scale, building the impact is critical, is what we're going to have to do as a world if we are going to meet the requirements of science.
So there's scaling up and there's showcasing as well. I like it. Stefan, if I can ask you.
Of course, the first aim is just more ambition in implementing the Paris Agreement and, of course, the Montreal Coming agreement or framework. And the second, that the IKI will be one important instrument just to bring up these ambitious goals and push up this integrated approach. I think the integrated approach is so good and is so important.
Yeah.
And I hope that we will...
Yeah, more ambition, integrated approach. I really love that. It really taps into what you said earlier about taking a different, unique way to talk about closing the gap across many sort of fields. Pak Rahmat, the honor is yours.
We focus on implementation all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, the German perfection is good. But I think right now, for this very difficult question, we need to find a perfectly acceptable solutions, and then we build on that more and more.
Oh, I like that too. It's approaching it also. There's this one saying that there are two sort of approaches you can have, which is a transitional approach and a crisis approach. And if you take a transitional approach, they say that it takes 2 to 3 generations before you get where you need to be, and then you do it according to the rules and you do it well and in a neat manner. But if you have a crisis approach, you can go way faster. But that also means that we need to accept that maybe it's going to be with bumps in the roads and maybe it's going to be hectic and chaotic, but we're going to get there nonetheless all together. Everyone, can I have a big round of applause for these 3 amazing speakers right here? Thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much. Now, Oh, I love this enthusiasm. I don't know about you guys, but I've heard some great things. We need to make nature our ally. We need to make sure that we get that teenager from 15 to 100 years, closing the gap. We need bravery as well, more ambition, an integrated approach, so many things that I think really speak to what we're discussing here today. I want to thank you all so much for participating. To the people online, thank you so much for watching. Our speakers, thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And if I can also say from my side to the organizing team that has been working very hard behind the scenes, yes, you know who you are. They've worked very hard to make today possible. So I would ask for one more round of applause for them. Thank you so much. And I won't say goodbye. I'll simply say until we meet again. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks. Thank you so much. You were all so wonderful.
Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP28 in Dubai. Ambitious, just together.